I laughed when my father insisted on installing a hidden camera at the venue 7 days before my wedding. I thought he was just paranoid about petty theft, but when I eventually watched that footage, I realized he was not looking for burglars. He was documenting a betrayal that would burn both our families to the ground. That ceremony never happened, but the lawsuit definitely did. My name is Harper Caldwell. I am 34 years old, and until 7 days ago, I operated under the delusion that I was the architect of my own life. As a project manager at Northgate Meridian Group here in Columbus, Ohio, my entire existence was built on risk assessment and mitigation. I managed million-dollar timelines without breaking a sweat. I assumed my wedding would be no different. The week leading up to the ceremony was a blur of final dress fittings, rehearsal dinner logistics, and last-minute budget approvals at the office. It was high pressure, certainly, but I told myself I was fine. I was stable. I was happy. Grant Hollis, the man I was about to marry, specialized in the performance of stability. He was handsome in that symmetrical, curated way that looks good on social media. Throughout our engagement, he loved to lecture me on partnership. Marriage is teamwork, Harper, he would say, usually when I was the one doing the actual work. He had this specific way of monitoring my emotional state, not to comfort me, but to modulate me. If I laughed too loud, he would place a hand on my arm to quiet me. If I stressed over a vendor, he would tell me I was being irrational. 3 days before the wedding, we were at the rental estate, a sprawling historic property we had booked for the entire weekend. Grant pulled me aside near the floral arrangements. He smiled, but his eyes remained flat. "Harper, honey, try to keep it together this week," Grant said, smoothing a wrinkle on my blazer. "Don't embarrass me in front of everyone." "Okay," I frowned, brushing his hand away. "I am not going to embarrass you. Grant, I am just tired." "Good," he replied, turning away to check his reflection in a window. "Because presentation is everything." That same afternoon, my father, Frank Caldwell, arrived. My dad is a man of granite and silence. He is not the type to fuss over centerpieces or playlist selections. Yet, he had called me 3 times that morning, insisting he needed to be at the venue early. "I need to check the perimeter," he had told me over the phone. "Dad, we hired security," I argued. "It is a wedding, not a summit." "I am coming early, Harper." End of discussion. When he arrived, the atmosphere in the house was a strange mix of joy and tension. My bridesmaids were steaming dresses in the East Wing. The DJ was testing the sound system in the garden. Everyone was smiling. Everyone except my father. He moved through the rooms like a building inspector looking for structural failure. He checked the window latches. He stared at the ceiling vents. I laughed it off. "Dad, nobody is going to steal the silverware," I joked, pouring myself a glass of water in the kitchen. Maya Redding, my best friend and maid of honor, walked in, looking perplexed. She leaned against the counter. "Harper, did you hire a second videographer team?" "No," I said. "Why some guy outside just asked me specifically when Grant would be arriving and where the primary action takes place," Maya said, using air quotes. It felt weird, like he was casting a reality show. Or staking the place out, probably just a vendor mixed up on the schedule. I said, dismissing it. I was too focused on the seating chart to worry about confused delivery drivers. I went looking for my father to tell him to relax. I found him in the hallway near the wine cellar, a blind spot in the house's layout. The music from the garden was muffled here. My father was standing on a step stool. He was holding a small, black rectangular object. It looked like a miniature smoke detector, but the lens gave it away. It was a camera. He was mounting it high up on the molding, hidden by the shadows. "Dad," I asked, my voice echoing slightly in the narrow hall. He jumped, which was unlike him. He immediately shoved the remaining equipment into his jacket pocket and stepped down. His face was pale, his jaw set tight. "What are you doing?" I asked, looking at the spot where he had been working. "Nothing. Nothing at all," Frank said, his voice rough. He patted my shoulder, his hand heavy and trembling slightly, just fixing a loose fixture. "Harper, go back to your friends. Do not worry about this." He walked past me quickly, refusing to meet my eyes. I stood there for a moment, looking at the empty hallway. I thought he was just being an overprotective father, obsessed with safety. I had no idea that he was not trying to keep people out. He was setting a trap for the people already inside. The bride and groom mingle was held at a rooftop bar called the Apex, a place that charged $20 for a cocktail and smelled of desperate exclusivity. I arrived 40 minutes late. My phone was still buzzing with emails from the legal department at Northgate, but I shoved it into my clutch. I took a breath, pasted on my engagement smile, and stepped out onto the terrace. I expected Grant to walk over. I expected him to hand me a drink or kiss my cheek. Instead, he leaned against the railing, surrounded by a wall of his fraternity brothers and college friends. He saw me instantly. I knew he saw me because his posture stiffened, but he did not move. He checked his watch, then looked back at his friends, effectively letting me drown in the crowd of strangers. It was a power move. He was forcing me to navigate the room alone, to approach him like a supplicant. When I finally pushed through the wall of navy blazers, I saw why he was so occupied. A woman was standing inside his personal space. She had vivid red hair and wore a dress that looked more like a slip. Her hand rested on Grant's bicep, her fingers tracing the fabric of his jacket. "Grant," I said, keeping my voice level. He turned slowly, swirling the ice in his glass. "You made it." Finally. Everyone. Harper decided to grace us with her presence. The group laughed, a sharp, jagged sound. I looked at the woman. "I do not think we have met." "This is Jules," Grant said, not bothering to introduce me to her. "She is an old friend. We have a lot of history." Jules Kincaid smiled at me. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who knew the punchline to a joke I had not yet heard. "Grant talks about you. Constantly," she said. Suddenly, someone in the back of the group started chanting, "Do it, do it, do it." The chant spread fast, rippling through the crowd of 30 people like a contagion. Phones were raised, flashlights clicked on, blinding me. I stepped back, confused. I thought they were chanting for us to kiss. I was wrong. Grant turned to Jules. He did not hesitate. He grabbed her waist and pulled her in. It was not a peck on the cheek. He kissed her aggressively, mashing his mouth against hers while dipping her slightly. The crowd erupted. Men were high-fiving. Women were covering their mouths, feigning shock but keeping their camera lenses steady. It felt like I was watching a car crash. But the most chilling part was not the kiss itself. It was Grant's eyes. While his lips were locked with another woman's, his eyes were wide open, staring directly at me. He was watching for my reaction. He was measuring my humiliation. He broke the kiss and shoved Jules back, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. He looked at me, his face flushed with adrenaline. "Do not walk away." Grant shouted over the noise, pointing a finger at my chest. "You wanted a man." "Harper, this is what a man is. You have to prove you are worthy of this. Prove you can fight for me." The silence that followed was heavy. The only sound was the wind and the faint hum of traffic from the street below. Every lens was trained on my face, waiting for the breakdown. They wanted tears. They wanted a scream. They wanted the crazy fiancé. I felt a coldness settle over me, absolute and paralyzing. It was clarity. This was not a drunken mistake. This was a production. I did not cry. I did not scream. I looked Grant in the eye, my pulse steady. "Grant," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. "You just gave me a legal reason to cancel everything." I turned on my heel and walked toward the exit. "That is it," Grant roared behind me. "You are just walking away. You are so cold." Harper. Look at her. Everyone she is ice. She does not even care. That is guilt. That is absolute guilt. I pushed through the double doors, leaving his voice behind. My hands were shaking now, but I kept walking. I needed to get to my car. I needed to breathe. I reached the parking lot, fumbling for my keys. The concrete structure was dim and quiet. Then I saw him. Wade Mercer, Grant's best man, was leaning against a concrete pillar near my sedan. He was holding his phone up horizontally. The lens pointed directly at me. He was panning slowly as I approached, tracking my movement like a cameraman filming a wildlife documentary. "Got nothing to say?" Harper Wade asked, grinning from behind the screen. He was not just recording. The interface on his screen was glowing with a stream of comments scrolling up the side. He was live streaming. I arrived at my apartment and immediately engaged the deadbolt. I did not collapse on the floor. I did not weep into my wedding dress. I sat at my kitchen island and opened my laptop. The first step was digital amputation. I blocked Grant's number. I blocked his email. I blocked his social media handles. I called the building management and revoked his guest access code. I changed the passwords to my bank accounts, my cloud storage, and even the shared streaming services. It felt less like a breakup and more like sterilizing a wound to prevent gangrene. My phone chimed. It was a direct message on Instagram from a blank profile with 0 followers. The message was short. "You should see what Grant is posting." The stranger wrote, "It is not just drama. It is a business model." Below the text was a hyperlink. My finger hovered over the trackpad. I knew clicking it would hurt, but ignorance was a liability I could not afford. I clicked. The link redirected me to a private hosting platform, a paid community called the Groom's Mastery Circle. The landing page featured Grant's face, professional and charismatic, overlaid with bold text "Take back control." Test her loyalty. Own the narrative. I felt bile rise in my throat. Grant was listed as a senior coach specializing in high-stakes relationship auditing. I scrolled down to the latest upload. It was posted only 20 minutes ago. The title read, "The 1-Week Test. Make her break or make her beg live field report." The thumbnail was me. It was a high-resolution freeze frame of my face at the rooftop bar, the exact moment I realized Grant was kissing Jules. I looked confused and small. I put on my headphones and pressed play. Grant was speaking to the camera, evidently filmed inside his car before he arrived at the bar. The dashboard clock read 7:45 in the evening. "All right, gentlemen, tonight is the critical episode." Grant said to the lens, his voice smooth and conspiratorial. "We are 7 days out. The pressure is peak. Tonight, we introduce the jealousy trigger. We need to see if she fights for the relationship or if she defaults to cold detachment. Watch her reaction closely. Do not let her escape the frame." The video cut to the rooftop. The editing was professional. It was not just Wade's shaky phone footage. There were multiple angles. One angle showed me entering from the elevator. Another angle, clearly filmed by someone standing near the bar, captured my isolation as Grant ignored me. Then came the kiss. The camera zoomed in on my face. "Look at that." Grant's voiceover narrated the clip, analyzing me like a specimen in a lab. No tears, no passion. She is checking out. This is a fail state. Guys, this is a woman who does not value the prize. I scrolled to the comments section. There were over 400 comments. She is a robot. Dump her. One user wrote, "Bro, she does not deserve you. Next test needs to be harder." Another commented, "Just donated $50. Fund the next test. Make her beg for forgiveness." They were doxing me. Someone had posted my job title. Someone else speculated about my salary. They were betting on my reactions like I was a racehorse. I opened a new folder on my desktop and named it Evidence. My hands were cold, but my movements were precise. I used screen capture software to record the entire video. I took screenshots of the subscriber list, capturing usernames that looked real. I archived the threats in the comments section, ensuring every timestamp was visible. I was not watching a breakup video. I was securing exhibits for a trial. Then I saw a related video in the sidebar. It was titled Bonus Content: The Setup. I clicked it. It was a raw clip, seemingly edited out of the main video but uploaded by mistake or for premium members. Grant was talking to Wade, who was off camera. "Make sure the audio is clear," Grant said, adjusting his tie. "If tonight goes south, we still have the ace. The Caldwell footage will ruin her family if we leak it." I paused the video. I replayed the last 5 seconds. The Caldwell footage. I whispered to the empty room. Grant was not just filming me in public. He had footage from Caldwell. That meant my father's house. That meant the wedding venue. My father had been right. The camera he installed was not paranoia. It was the only thing that had seen the enemy coming before I did. I closed the laptop. The silence in my apartment was deafening. I grabbed my car keys. I needed to see my father. I needed to see what his camera had seen. I drove to my parents' house in a state of numbness. The streets of Columbus were empty, the streetlights blurring into long streaks of amber against my windshield. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark, save for a single light burning in my father's study. It looked less like a home and more like a command center. I let myself in with my key. My father, Frank, was sitting in his leather armchair. He was not reading the newspaper. He was not watching television. He was sitting in total silence, staring at the blank wall, his hands clasped over his stomach. He did not look surprised to see me. He looked like a general who had been waiting for the first casualty report of the war to arrive. "You saw the video online," Frank said. It was not a question. "I saw it," I replied, dropping my purse onto the floor. "I need to pick up the wedding binder. Dad, I am going to burn it." "Sit down." "Harper," he said, his voice unusually soft. I remained standing. "Dad, I know about the camera. Grant said something in his video about the Caldwell footage. You did install it, didn't you? At the venue, while I was laughing at you for being paranoid. You were spying on me." Frank looked at me, his eyes tired but sharp. "I did not install it to spy on you, and I did not put cameras in the bedrooms or the dressing areas. I only covered the wine cellar and the service hallway. The blind spots. Why I demanded, feeling a fresh wave of violation. Why would you do that? Because I needed insurance," Frank said. He reached down and lifted his laptop from the floor. He opened it and turned the screen toward me. "Watch." I moved closer. The video player showed a timestamp from today, but the time was 3 in the afternoon. That was 4 hours before the rooftop party. The angle was high, looking down into the service corridor of the rental house. The back door opened. 2 people walked in. I recognized them immediately. It was Wade Mercer and the red-headed woman, Jules Kincaid. They were not dressed for a party. Wade was carrying a tool case. Jules was holding a roll of industrial tape. "They were there," I whispered. "How did they get in?" "They had a key," Frank said grimly. "On the screen." Wade opened a panel on the wall near the thermostat. He placed a small black device inside and closed it. Jules moved down the hall, taping a similar device under the antique console table. They were bugging the house. They were turning my wedding venue into a soundstage. Then, the front door opened. Grant walked into the frame. My breath caught in my throat. Grant was supposed to be at his office all afternoon. He had texted me a photo of a stack of paperwork at 2 o'clock. But there he was, standing in the hallway of the wedding venue, holding a clipboard. He pointed to the ceiling, then to the floor, directing Wade and Jules on where to place the devices. He was not a victim of his friend's prank. He was the director. "It was a set," I said, my voice shaking. "The rooftop. The house. It is all one big set. He is building a season of television." "Harper," Frank said, closing the laptop with a snap. "He wanted to capture you breaking down at the altar. He wanted audio of you crying in the hallway. He wanted every angle covered." I looked at my father. He seemed older tonight, the lines on his face etched deeper by the glow of the lamp. "You knew," I said. "You knew he was up to something. That is why you were checking the perimeter. That is why you brought the camera." "I suspected," Frank corrected. "How I asked. How could you possibly suspect that the man I have been with for 3 years was planning to monetize our humiliation?" Frank stood up. He walked over to the window and looked out at the dark lawn. "I installed the camera because someone told me you were going to be tricked," Frank said slowly. "Someone warned me that there was a risk of fraud. They suggested I take security measures to protect the family assets. Mom told you I guessed." Frank turned back to me. His expression was unreadable. "No," he said. "Grant told me." I stared at him, unable to process the words. Grant told you to spy on himself." "He did not tell me to spy on him," Frank said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "He told me to watch you. He came to me a month ago. He said he was worried you were having cold feet. He said he was worried you might stage something to get out of the wedding and keep the deposits. He manipulated me into installing surveillance so that when he broke you, he would have a third-party witness to your reaction. He wanted me to be his cameraman." The room spun. Grant had not just weaponized his friends. He had weaponized my own father against me. "Dad, that does not make sense," I said, pacing the length of his study. "If Grant told you to install the cameras to watch me, he knew he was inviting surveillance into the house. Why would he risk you seeing him plant bugs with his mistress? He is arrogant, but he is not stupid." Frank did not answer. He poured himself a glass of scotch, his hand steady. I walked over to the desk where the wedding contracts were stacked. I had not looked at them closely in months. I had been too busy picking out linens. I flipped open the folder for the catering agreement, the deposit. "It was $15,000, I muttered, tracing the line item. I looked at the payer information. It was not my father's personal checking account. It was drawn from a corporate account, Caldwell Holdings, LLC. I checked the venue contract, same payer, the florist, the band. Every single check was written against my father's business entities, categorized under public relations and event marketing. My mother, Dana, walked into the room. She was wearing her bathrobe, clutching the collar tight to her throat. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. "Harper, please stop digging," Dana said, her voice thin and reedy. "You do not understand what is at stake here. This wedding. It is saving something bigger than love." "Bigger than love?" I scoffed, holding up the invoice. What is bigger than my life being turned into a reality show? "Mom, our survival," she whispered. I pulled out my phone. I ignored the notifications from Grant's trolls and searched my father's name in the local legal database. I scrolled past the usual property records until I found a filing from 2 months ago. It was a civil suit, State of Ohio versus Frank Caldwell. The allegations were sealed, but the keywords were visible: improper land zoning, undisclosed assets, fraud. I looked up at Frank. "You are being sued, and it is not just a slip-and-fall case. They are coming after the family reputation." "It is a misunderstanding," Frank said dismissively, taking a sip of his drink. "Grant has a brother who runs a crisis management firm in Chicago," I said, the pieces clicking together like a sickening puzzle. "That is why you let him take over the guest list. That is why we invited the mayor. This is not a wedding. It is a press release. You needed a wholesome family event to bury the headlines about your fraud case. We needed good press." Harper Dana cried out. "If the public thinks we are unstable, the investors pull out. We lose everything. The house, your trust fund, everything." I looked at my father with a new kind of horror. Grant was using me for internet fame. My father was using me for corporate cover. "Answer me, Dad," I said, stepping into his personal space. "Did you install that camera to protect me from Grant, or did you install it to protect your investment?" Frank set his glass down. I knew Grant was volatile. I knew he was planning something. I did not know what. But I knew that if he caused a scandal that blew back on this family while I am under investigation, I would need leverage. "Leverage," I repeated, feeling the word taste like ash. I needed evidence to lock him down, Frank admitted, his eyes hard. If he tried to blackmail us, or if he tried to ruin the event, I needed something to hold over his head. I did not care if he cheated on you, Harper. I cared if he embarrassed me. I felt a hollow ache in my chest. So I am just collateral damage. I am not a daughter. I am a shield. I turned back to the laptop on the desk. The video file was still open. I reached out and scrubbed the timeline back, past the moment Grant entered, past the moment Wade and Jules arrived. I went back to the very beginning of the recording, right after my father had finished installing the device. The footage showed the empty hallway. Then, the back door opened. My father walked in. But he was not alone. Wade Mercer walked in behind him. I froze. In the video, Frank and Wade stood in the hallway. They were not arguing. They were not fighting. Frank reached into his pocket and handed Wade a thick white envelope. Wade took it, checked the contents, and nodded. Then they shook hands. It was a business transaction. You met him? I whispered, pointing at the screen. You met Wade, before the setup, before the live stream. You knew Wade was going to be there. Frank's face went gray. You did not just watch it happen. Dad, I said, my voice barely audible. You paid the cameraman. I walked into the offices of Vale & Associates at 8 o'clock the next morning. I did not want a therapist. I wanted a weapon. Morgan Vale was a civil litigator who specialized in image rights and defamation. She listened to my timeline without blinking, her pen moving across a yellow legal pad like a scalpel. Here is the reality. Harper, Morgan said, leaning back in her chair. If Grant had just cheated on you, that is a heartbreak. But he filmed it, he edited it, and most importantly, he put it behind a paywall. He is using your likeness for commercial gain without a release form. That is our hook. He thinks it is just a game, I said, my voice steady. He thinks he is teaching men how to be alpha males. He is running a business based on non-consensual harassment, Morgan corrected. And because there was a script, and because there were multiple people involved in the setup, we can argue conspiracy. We are going to bleed him dry. We spent the next 3 hours constructing a forensic timeline. I reverted to my project manager mode. I treated my humiliation as a data set. Item 1, the rooftop bar, 7:15 in the evening. Item 2, the parking lot confrontation, 7:40. Item 3, the upload to the Groom's Mastery portal, 8:05. Every event was stamped, categorized, and linked to a piece of digital evidence. By noon, Morgan had drafted cease and desist letters to Grant, Wade Mercer, and the hosting platform of the video community. These were not polite requests. They were preservation demands. We were legally notifying them that deleting any footage, text messages, or metadata would be considered spoliation of evidence in a federal lawsuit. Now, you need to evict him. Morgan said, digitally. I nodded. I spent the lunch hour severing every digital tie. I removed his name from the lease. I canceled the secondary credit cards. I changed the password to the electric bill, the internet, and the streaming services. I logged him out of every device I could access remotely. Grant noticed the freeze immediately. At 2 o'clock, he launched his counterattack. I was in a meeting when the head of human resources at Northgate pulled me aside. Her face was pale. Harper. We received a concerning email from Grant, she said, handing me a printout. The subject line read, Urgent Wellness Check for Harper Caldwell. In the body of the email, Grant claimed I was suffering from a severe mental health crisis and was prone to violent outbursts. He expressed deep concern for my safety and the safety of my colleagues. He was trying to paint me as the unstable ex-girlfriend before I could control the narrative. At the same time, my phone lit up with a text from my mother. Grant just called. He says you are manic. He says you are refusing to speak to him. Harper, please pick up. I did not panic. I handed the paper back to the HR director. This is a retaliatory tactic because I ended the engagement, I said, my voice calm and professional. I would like to file a formal incident report regarding harassment. Also, please pull the security footage from the building lobby from yesterday. You will see Grant trying to force his way past security to intimidate me. I did not offer tears. I offered documentation. The HR director nodded, relieved by my composure. I called Morgan back at 4 o'clock. He is getting desperate, Morgan said over the speakerphone. The mental health angle is standard operating procedure for guys like this. He wants to discredit your testimony before we even get to court. It won't work. I said, I have the footage from my father's house. I have proof it was staged. The footage is good. Morgan agreed. But if we want to bury him, we need a witness. We need someone who was in the room when they planned it. We need someone who is scared enough to flip. I thought about the video of the two men shaking hands in the hallway. I thought about the live stream in the parking lot. Wade, I said. Wade Mercer is a follower. He does not have Grant's money, and he definitely does not have the stomach for a lawsuit. Get him on record. Morgan advised. Don't threaten him. Just let him talk. People like that always hang themselves if you give them enough rope. I hung up and stared at my phone. I sent a text to Wade. I know about the pool. I know about the money. Meet me at the diner on 4th Street, alone. Or I name you as the primary co-conspirator in the filing tomorrow. It took 3 minutes for the typing bubble to appear. I will be there in 20. I grabbed my coat. I was not going there to make peace. I was going there to make him confess. I sat in the corner booth of the Metro Diner, a place that smelled of grease and burnt coffee. It was loud, filled with the clatter of silverware and the hum of conversations. It was the perfect cover. I placed my phone face down on the table, the voice memo app already running silently in the background. I was not there to make a scene. I was there to depose a witness. Wade Mercer slid into the booth opposite me. He looked terrible. His eyes were darting around the room, checking the exits, checking the other patrons. He did not order a drink. He just drummed his fingers on the laminate table. Look, Harper. Wade started, his voice low and defensive. You need to calm down. You are blowing this way out of proportion with the lawyers and the threats. It is just entertainment. It is content. Nobody actually got hurt. I folded my hands on the table. I kept my face blank. Entertainment. Since when does a practical joke come with a profit-sharing spreadsheet? Wade scoffed, leaning back against the vinyl seat. He tried to look arrogant, but his foot was tapping nervously under the table. Everyone has a side hustle these days. Harper, besides, do not act like you are the only victim here. The pool is almost at $15,000, and if you keep freezing us out, the odds get messed up. I kept my voice even, baiting the hook. The pool. Yeah, the betting pool, Wade said, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Grant set it up on the back end. The subscribers are betting on your reaction time, how long you stay away, how fast you break. But honestly, the payout is way higher if you come back. There is a massive bonus structure for the reconciliation episode. If you walk down that aisle next week, even just to yell at him, the engagement numbers spike and we all get paid out. My stomach turned. They were not just humiliating me. They were gambling on my trauma. Who is holding the money? Wade, I asked softly. Who is the bank Jules? He answered without thinking. She is the treasurer. She has the master sheet with all the names. Venmo, crypto, everything is tracked. She is intense about the bookkeeping. And the script I pressed, leaning in just an inch. Did Grant come up with all of this on his own? The kiss, the speech, the humiliation. Grant wrote the dialogue. Wade said, shrugging as if discussing a school project. He is the creative guy. He knows what triggers the algorithm. But the final approval, the green light for the location and the timing, that was Frank. The noise of the diner seemed to vanish. I stared at him. My father, I asked. Yeah, your dad, Wade said, grabbing a napkin and tearing it into strips. Grant pitched the concept to him. Frank wanted to make sure the lighting was right for those security cameras he installed. He said if we were going to do it, We had to make sure the footage was clear enough to be admissible if things went wrong. He signed off on the rooftop scene because he knew it would push you back to the family safety net. Wade stopped. His hands froze on the napkin. He looked up at me, and I saw the color drain from his face. He realized he had said too much. "I mean," Wade stammered, his eyes widening. He knew about it vaguely. He didn't, strictly speaking." "He approved the script," I said, my voice cold and final. "He didn't just watch," he directed. I wasn't just betrayed by a groom. Wade. I was sold by the Caldwell estate. Harper. "Wait," Wade said, reaching across the table. "Are you recording this? You cannot use this. I was just talking." I stood up, picking up my phone and sliding it into my pocket. The red recording bar was still pulsing. "You just turned yourself from a friend into a co-conspirator," I whispered. "And I have the confession on tape." I walked out of the diner, leaving Wade hyperventilating in the booth. The air outside was cold, but I felt like I was burning. My father had not just protected the family name. He had manufactured the threat to ensure I would need his protection. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was an email. I expected it to be from Morgan, my lawyer. It wasn't. The sender was Jules Kincaid. Subject: I have the ledger. I opened the message. "Harper. We need to meet. Alone. I have the payment sheet and the emails between Grant and the production team. I have evidence that will destroy Grant. But I am terrified because the person who funded the initial setup wasn't Grant. It was Frank. And if your father knows I am talking to you, I think he will ruin me. Please. I need a way out." I met Jules in the back of a library, the only place she felt safe from Frank's reach. She looked nothing like the vixen in the red dress. She was wearing a hoodie and shaking. "I am an actress, Harper," Jules said, sliding a folder across the table. "I booked this gig through a third-party casting site. The role was listed as improvised romantic conflict. I thought it was for a viral marketing campaign for a dating app. I did not know I was destroying a real marriage." She opened her phone and showed me a text thread. The contact name was Grant. "Look at this," Jules said. "He messaged me this morning. He wants me to film a confession video. He wants me to say that I saw you with another man at the hotel bar last week. He wants to flip the narrative. He said if I fake a cheating accusation against you, the heat comes off him." I felt a cold rage settle in my gut. He is trying to frame me. "And look who paid me," Jules whispered. She pulled up a bank statement. The wire transfer for $2,000 did not come from Grant. It came from Apex Consulting LLC. I knew that name. I pulled up the corporate registry on my phone. Apex Consulting was registered to Marcus Thorne. Marcus was my father's personal attorney and right-hand man. My father had not just approved the script. His money had paid for the woman who kissed my fiancé. Grant, meanwhile, was spiraling. He sent 36 white roses to the reception desk at Northgate with a card that read, "I forgive you." When I did not respond, he posted a video of himself crying in his car, titled, "The Silence is Abuse." I did not comment. I did not post a rebuttal. I simply took photos of the flowers, printed the emails, and saved the video to the evidence drive. My silence was not weakness. It was legal strategy. Morgan took the entire file to the courthouse at 2 o'clock. We filed for an emergency protective order. We attached the HR incident report, the time-stamped footage from the house, and Jules's sworn affidavit. That evening, I went to my parents' house to serve them the news myself. Frank was pacing the living room. "You filed a restraining order," Frank shouted, his face purple. "Do you know what this does? It makes everything public record. The press will pick this up by morning." "Good," I said calmly. "Grant is harassing me, and you paid for the accomplice." "I paid to control the situation," Frank argued. "We need this wedding to happen. Harper, we need the merger of the families to stop the investigation into the company. I am not marrying him to save your reputation." "Dad," I said. my voice cutting through the air like glass. My mother, Dana, stood up from the sofa. She had been crying. "Harper, listen to him," she pleaded. "We are in debt. Deep debt. Your father, he hid liabilities in the real estate projects. This wedding. The press coverage, the investors attending. It was supposed to be a signal that the Caldwell family is stable. I agreed to it. I agreed to the PR strategy. I looked at my mother, a woman who had always preached about dignity. "You knew," I asked. "You knew I was being sold. I knew we needed a distraction," Dana sobbed. "But I did not know Grant would do this. I did not know he would turn you into content. You traded my happiness for a stock price," I said. My phone buzzed. It was Morgan. The judge granted an emergency hearing. Morgan said, "It is set for Friday morning, the day before the wedding date." "Harper, if we go in there, everything comes out. The fraud, the camera, the payments. There is no going back." I looked at my parents. Frank was glaring at me, daring me to destroy the family. Dana was weeping. "I will see you in court," I said to my father. I walked out of the house. I had a choice to make. I could stay silent and let my family survive on a lie, or I could burn the whole script and write my own ending. The Thursday before the hearing felt less like the eve of a legal battle and more like the quiet before a demolition. Grant decided to play his final card at 9 in the morning. He posted a video titled "The Grand Gesture." In it, he sat somberly in his living room, claiming he was donating the entire wedding catering budget, $40,000, to a foundation for rebuilding trust. "Harper has agreed to meet me at the venue tomorrow." Grant lied to the camera, his voice thick with fabricated emotion. "We are going to have a private reconciliation. Please, everyone, pray for us." The internet ate it up. The comments were flooded with heart emojis. I did not engage. I did not comment. Instead, I opened my laptop and went to work. I drafted formal cancellation notices to the venue, the florist, and the lighting crew. I cited the safety clause in our contracts. I was not going to let him have a stage. If he showed up at the venue tomorrow, he would be standing in an empty room with the lights off. Then, I made my own transaction. I transferred $5,000 to a legal defense fund for victims of non-consensual image abuse. The memo line was short, "For the ones who fight back." I sent the receipt to Grant's publicist to ensure they knew I was not coming back to play house. At the law office, Morgan was assembling a fortress of paper. "We have the chain of custody on the video files," Morgan said, organizing the stack. "We have the metadata showing the edit points. We have the bank records linking your father's shell company to the actress. And now, we have the betting pool." Jules sat in the corner, signing her affidavit. She looked terrified, but she signed her name. Then the door opened. It was Maya. She looked pale. "I have something else," Maya said, placing a USB drive on the desk. I did not want to believe it at first. But at the rehearsal dinner, I recorded Wade. He was drunk. He was bragging about the script. Morgan plugged it in. Wade's voice filled the room, slurring but distinct. Frank signed off on the drama. He said as long as the press is there, he does not care if they cry. My father was not going down quietly. At noon, a courier delivered a letter from a high-priced intellectual property firm representing Frank Caldwell. The letter was aggressive. It claimed the hidden camera and all resulting footage were the exclusive intellectual property of Frank Caldwell, and that any use of it in court would be theft. He was trying to bury the evidence under copyright law. "He is scared," Morgan said. Reading the letter, "File a motion to preserve evidence," I commanded. "If he deletes 1 second of that footage, I want him held in contempt." I went back to my apartment to wait for the sun to rise. I sat in the dark, watching the city lights. My phone chimed at midnight. It was a file sent via an encrypted drop service. No sender name. I opened the video. It was grainy, likely taken from a security camera at a coffee shop weeks ago. It showed my father sitting across from Grant. There were papers on the table. It looked like a business merger. Frank reached across the table and shook Grant's hand. The audio was faint, but I turned the volume up to the maximum. "We have a deal," Frank said on the recording. "I will fund the cleanup, but you ensure the girl does not run. I need her in that dress." I closed the laptop. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. My father had not just protected the reputation, he had actively conspired to keep me trapped in the performance. I was not a bride. I was a prisoner who had just found the key. The hearing began at 8 o'clock in the morning. Grant arrived looking like the lead in a tragic romance movie. He wore a navy suit, his hair perfectly unkempt to suggest distress. His lawyer, a young man with a sharp jawline, tried to frame the entire week as a romantic misunderstanding. "Your Honor," the lawyer said, smoothing his tie, "my client is a content creator. This was performance art, and Ms. Caldwell was a willing participant until she decided to create her own drama." They played a clip. It was heavily edited. It showed me looking angry at the rooftop, cut together with footage from my father's camera showing me pacing the hallway. They were trying to paint me as the unstable bride, the paranoid woman who manufactured a crisis. Morgan Vale did not object. She waited. When it was her turn, she did not use adjectives. She used metadata. "The defense claims this was art," Morgan said, plugging her laptop into the courtroom display. "We claim it was a conspiracy to defraud and harass. Let us look at the timestamps." She displayed the raw file of the betting pool spreadsheet. She played the audio of Wade Mercer drunkenly admitting to the gambling scheme. The courtroom went silent as Wade's voice slurred. $15,000 if she breaks at the altar. Then Jules took the stand. She was shaking, but her voice was clear. She read from her affidavit. Grant Hollis directed the kiss. He hired the cameraman. He told me to wait until the crowd was loud enough. He also offered me an additional $2,000 to fake a video accusing Harper of infidelity. Grant's lawyer tried to object, but Morgan was already playing the final piece of evidence. The video I had received the night before. On the screen, my father sat across from Grant. The audio was thin but audible. "I will fund the cleanup," Frank's voice said on the recording. "But you ensure the girl does not run. I need her in that dress." The judge turned to Frank. My father stood up, his face pale. "I was protecting my daughter," Frank stammered, gripping the railing. I wanted to make sure she went through with it for her own future." Morgan stepped forward. "If you were protecting her, Mr. Caldwell, why did you approve a script designed to humiliate her in front of 30 people? Frank opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. The judge banged the gavel. The sound was the sweetest thing I had ever heard. "I am granting a permanent protective order against Mr. Hollis." The judge ruled, "You are ordered to remove all content featuring Ms. Caldwell immediately. Furthermore, given the financial evidence, I am referring this matter to the Civil Division for damages regarding invasion of privacy and defamation." Then came the final blow. The judge looked at the bank records. "And regarding this LLC, Apex Consulting, the court is issuing a subpoena for their financial records to determine the extent of the funding for this harassment campaign." Frank slumped in his seat. The LLC was his shield, and it had just been shattered. I walked out of the courtroom into the bright morning sun. Grant was standing near the stairs, looking at his phone, frantically trying to delete videos. He looked small. He looked like a man whose show had just been canceled. I turned to my father. He was standing by his car, looking old and defeated. "Harper," he said, his voice breaking. "You ruined the wedding. You ruined the family name." I looked him in the eye. I felt lighter than I had in years. "I did not cancel the wedding, Dad," I said quietly. "I canceled your control." I turned and walked down the street, my heels clicking on the pavement. I was no longer a bride. I was no longer a pawn. I was the one who wrote the last line of the story. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. so please drop a comment below and let's chat. If you enjoyed this revenge drama, please subscribe to the Mia Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.